Në një laborator, vlla, o Rushdi. Të marr sekretin, o Rushdi.
Çfarë sekrete për? Ata dim shumë se mua, ata sipër janë.
Po ti thua ata nuk e bëjnë se s'kan interes.
Ata kanë aparaturë me frekuencë, futin smurin dhe shohin brenda 2 orëve. Ata sipër.
Pse se bëjnë?
Po nuk do të shohin ty e mua tani popull dele vlla. Ata merren me elitën.
Pra ne jemi mish për top, Rushdi.
Mish për top.
Edhe një herë tjetër, këta persona tregojnë se nuk ja kanë fare haberin se si funksionojnë gjërat më fundamentale, e të mos flasim diçka më shumë. Pikë pari, një gjë që duhet ta marrin vesh këta është se edhe hulumtuesit farmaceutik, shkencëtarët, shefat e kompanive farmaceutike, familjarët të afërmit e tyre dhe të dashurit e tyre preken nga kanceri dhe vdesin nga ai. Dhe ka me 10 raste të tilla. Këtu do t'i paraqes disa nga ato raste. E dyta, a e dini se kush janë më të mëdhenj dhe më të fuqishëm se kompanitë farmaceutike? Janë kompanitë e sigurimeve shëndetësore. Ato janë aq të fuqishme dhe aq shumë para kanë sa kompanitë farmaceutike duken të varfra përballë tyre. Po kjo tregon qartë edhe një herë ignorancën e tyre në ekonominë elementare. Madje aq të pasura janë sa që kanë mundësi të krijojnë edhe një herë nga zero industrinë farmaceutike. Nëse do të verenin kompanitë e sigurimeve shëndetësore se kompanitë farmaceutike po fshehin kurrën e kancerit, ato do ta shkatronin komplet atë kompani. Kompanitë e sigurimeve shëndetësore të marrin paratë qofsh së mur apo jo, ata të marrin paratë e tua dhe qofsh shëndosh si kokra e mollës. Kështu që fshehja e kurrës apo diçka e ngjashme nuk ka fare kuptim. Tani, ka plot raste ku disa trajtime kanë qenë shumë të kushtueshme para se të gjendej ilaçi i duhur nga shkencëtarët, ku pastaj me gjetjen e ilaçit edhe kostoja e trajtimit ka rënë ndjeshëm. Gjë që na bën të kuptojmë se nuk është e gjitha puna tek paraja e lakmia. Njëra prej tyre është edhe kura për helikobakterin, i cili para se të gjendej ilaçi, trajtimi i tij kushtonte shumë shtrenjtë. Tashmë, helikobakteri mund të kurohet me vetëm 5 euro antibiotik. Madje dy shkencëtarët që zbuluan kurrën fituan çmimin Nobel. Edhe pse kjo kurrë kushtonte shumë më lirë se ajo para saj. Cilën nuk e pengoj askush të dilte në treg. Ideja se kompanitë farmaceutike po fshehin kurrat fillimisht është një mosnjohje bazike se si ato funksionojnë. Është njësoj si dikush të thotë se kompanitë automobilave po fshehin njërin seri të veturave. Nuk ka fare sens. Si kompanitë automobilave, ashtu edhe kompanitë farmaceutike përfitojnë nga ilaçet që shesin. Dikush edhe mund të thotë se i fshehin kurrat në lidhje me kancerin në mënyrë që njerëzit të sëmurën. Po ne e dimë se sëmundjet e kancerit shpesh herë din të shkaktojnë edhe vdekje. Kështu që një person i vdekur ndalën se qeni konsumatori i ilaçeve, pra nuk ka kuptim fare kjo punë. Edhe diçka tjetër që njerëzit duhet ta dinë është se hulumtuesit, shkencëtarët e vaksinologët nuk është se i hyn diçka në xhep nëse fshehin apo zbulojnë nga kurrat. Ata nuk kanë patentat e tyre apo diçka të ngjashme, sepse ata në fund të fundit janë prona intelektuale të spitaleve apo kompanive që punojnë dhe kanë një rrugë të caktuar. Kështu që nuk i lëvërdisin atyre fare këto gjëra. Këtu do ta lëshoj një klip i cili paraqet njërin prej bashkëshpikësve të vaksinës rotavirus, vaksinë që marrin të gjithë fëmijët. Doktori në fjalë është Paul Offit, i cili është një pediatër amerikan i specializuar në sëmundjet infektive. Dhe këtu ai tregon se si qëndron puna në lidhje me paratë që ata fitojnë.
What is RFK Jr. trying to do with all this misinformation, and why do so many people believe him?
I think he's trying to create a culture of fear, and that the fear is that we live in this toxic environmental soup. Why? I don't know. I mean, I'd really like to know. I know that he is of counsel to the law firm of Morgan & Morgan. That's supposedly true. He was of counsel to the law firm of Levin, Papantonio. What are they paying him to do? These are class action law firms. Are they trying to scare up sort of a class action lawsuit? I don't get it, because He's knowingly misrepresenting data. I mean, when he wrote a paper in 2005 in Rolling Stone called Deadly Immunity, one of the things he focused on was a CDC-directed meeting in a center outside of Atlanta, a conference center called Simpsonwood. And if you looked at the transcript of that meeting, now it was a meeting with just scientists and academicians and researchers and public health officials and CDC officials, so it wasn't open to the public. But the transcript's available. Well, when he wrote that article, he basically misrepresented what people said. He cut and pasted it to make it look like something nefarious was going on, like that something was being hidden. And that's not what happened. So he's knowingly misrepresenting data, and that's what makes him different.
Speaking of misrepresenting, that brings us to your other post, my conversation with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which you had 20 years ago. And tell us about that.
Right. So he called me about 20 years ago and said that he had people who had come to him, mothers who had come to him that were concerned about thimerosal at the level contained in vaccines. Could I help him out with that? Could I talk to him about that? And this was 20 years ago, but my recollection was that conversation went really well. I remember coming home that night and telling my wife that I think it went really well. And I had certainly had an enormous amount of respect for his father, who I thought was a civil rights icon and was a brave man. But then I found out, like about a year later, he published an article in Rolling Stone called Deadly Immunity, and he sandbagged me. He just said I was in the pocket of industry, that I had worked a deal with Merck to make $186 million, which certainly news to me and news to my wife. I didn't work any deal with Merck. First of all, I'm the intellectual property of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They own any patent that we had regarding vaccines, they owned. So therefore, they owned me. If there were any deals that would be done, they were doing them. So it's just completely made up. But what happened with that was by labeling me as a shill, labeling me as someone who was just going to line my pockets, expensive children's health, that really put me in harm's way. I got a lot of hate mail. I got 3 legitimate death threats. My children were threatened. I was physically threatened once outside of CDC when you had to walk through a group of protesters because he saw me as evil or painted me as evil.
Yeah, and that perception of you continues to this day. You have the last episode of Beyond the Noise. Someone wrote under it, "You're just an industry shill." So it's something he started, and it's going to be hard for you to get away from, even though it isn't true.
Because that's what he has to do. He doesn't have the data, right? If the law's on your side, argue the law. If facts are on your side, argue the facts. If neither are on your side, then shoot the messenger. So that's what he does. Yeah. He shoots the messenger because he doesn't have the facts. I mean, when reporters call me and say, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just said this about you, my response is usually, I'm not his problem. The science that consistently shows he's wrong is his problem. That's who he should be going up against, and he can't.
He accused you of developing a rotavirus vaccine, which is laced with thimerosal, in his words, right?
Right. No live attenuated viral vaccines contain preservatives. And when that article came out, and that's what it said, I called up the editor at Rolling Stone and I said, look in the package insert. Not in there. Ask the FDA. It's not in there. I mean, so retract the article. They eventually did retract the article, but it took far too long.
Is there anything at all in the Rogan interview or in the RFK Jr. article for Rolling Stone about vaccines that is actually factually correct?
Not that I saw, no. I mean, the sort of the opening salvo was that vaccines contain 187 times the amount of mercury that is legally allowed. And that was off. It was close to 1.4 times, and that had to do with methyl mercury, which this wasn't. This was ethyl mercury, so that was also wrong. No, it was pretty much all wrong. It's hard to be consistently wrong, but that's what RFK Jr. appears to be able to do.
But just to make it clear again, which vaccines contain thimerosal today?
Right. So for children less than 4, none. There are still some multi-dose vials of flu vaccine which can contain thimerosal. But if you're worried about that, and there's no reason to be, but if you're worried about that, you can always get a vaccine that is thimerosal free.